What's up everyone? We're back in the garden and today I wanted to go over a concept that basically everyone knows just by common sense, but it does have some principles rooted in permaculture and French intensive gardening. That is intercropping, coming up. So I'm a big fan of taking all useful parts of each methodology or ideology of gardening. So either French intensive market gardening, which started around Paris centuries ago and was brought over here to California and then spread, which is basically just stacking vegetables and plants way too close together. You got to plan things a little better, doing succession planting and just not leaving any bare soil. So it's not a farming technique, that's more of a gardening technique used when you just don't have a lot of space, but you still want a lot of food, which is what I have. That combined with permaculture principles of stacking time, stacking space, using things, beneficial plants, using things, companion planting that benefit each other in soil microbe makeup or nitrogen use, nitrogen fixation, things like that. So what we're doing here, and I just do this because we don't have a lot of space, is we have different varieties of peppers going. Peppers take like 4 or 5 months to mature. They just do it very slowly. So in the meantime, there is no reason to not put lettuce, herbs, or any other quick growing thing in there. We have some cilantro and tomatoes going behind you, which I'll give you a shot of afterwards, but I chose lettuce just because it takes about a month to mature, and then we'll just make some mixes out of it. And the peppers won't be done for another couple of months, so the lettuces will get ripped out. Probably something else will get put in its place. I don't like to plant the same thing in the same spot generation after generation, just because that's how you incur pest problems, just because they will, if a pest finds a certain type of plant, it will reproduce, and if that gets into the soil, you'll have that consistent pest problem in that area. So if you just move that type of crop away from the area, the pest will still be there, but it won't have anything to feed on immediately, so hopefully the reproductive cycle will get broken. So lettuce will be here. It's also a decent idea, and if you can see behind me, we have some purple opal basil and Genovese basil, some Thai basil too, sprinkled throughout. It's not a bad idea to sprinkle herbs and edible flowers throughout everything for the same reason. Different herbs and different edible flowers, nasturtiums, marigolds, are pest repellents, mostly from the scents and chemicals in the air they give off. It gets a little tricky planting a bunch of herbs together just because they can actually talk to each other via chemicals they send off in the air and influence each other's tastes. So if you're doing the herb thing, put oregano away from basil, away from thyme. They don't necessarily need to be right next to each other. So basil and some other flowers, got sunflowers and zinnias here, but the basil is a good repellent for things that like peppers. And our squashes are completely separate from everything. So zucchini, summer squashes, winter squashes are not interspersed with anything, just because they will usually attract squash borer beetles, which are miserable and huge and will just eat things. There are a couple plants that you can do for that. Most people do beans and corn, three sisters, but I don't like beans or corn, so I don't use those. So we're just doing simple things here, and we'll flip around and I'll show you some edible flowers and cilantro. But if you can see here, I have cilantro planted in with the tomatillos and tomatoes. And that's just because it doesn't need a ton of sun. It grows pretty quickly, and it just covers the soil. So bare soil just isn't ever good. We need some vegetation to hold the soil, prevent the elements from wicking it away, so that's wind and, well, here, predominantly wind. Just heavy sun and wind will leach nutrients out of the soil, so keep soil covered is one of the main things. I'm not too worried about it here because the tomatillos and tomatoes will grow so profusely that they'll just shade out everything, so it prevents the sun from beating on them. But cilantro will be this generation, and then the next generation I will probably sprinkle lettuce and maybe even do some head lettuce. As the tomatoes grow, I will pick the bottom leafy structures off any point at which I have already harvested tomatoes. So those are cherries that will grow, and I will prune as they go up just to get rid of leafy growth that's senescing and just sucking energy from the plant. And then I'll probably put, a lot of people do this, lettuce at the base of that, or some green that appreciates the shade, that does not suck a ton of nutrition out of the soil. I do fertilize about halfway through the summer with probably some 543 or some broad spectrum organic fertilizer, just for another little boost in the dead of summer when all the nightshades are going crazy. But we have some flowers sprinkled in and around here. Like I said, the nasturtiums, and then there is a, I'll show you a picture, there's a marigold right behind me, but basically just trying to disincentivize any large pest problem. You'll always have some pest problem. There's little tiny holes on this, but flea beetles and aphids and whiteflies are the biggest nuisance of most tomatoes and just nightshades in general. So I will end up putting some basil, which I have in the greenhouse. I'll give you a shot of that. Still coming, so we'll intercrop some basil around. That tends to keep the white flies off of it. Aphids you can just spray down, and there are organic pest management solutions which I try to not use, just because if you don't have to, why do it? But that's it for today. Just wanted to encourage you, if you have not a lot of space, just to sprinkle greens and herbs, quick growing ground cover crops everywhere, just to keep soil covered. And as long as you have decent soil with compost and some long-term organic fertilizer, you should not run into soil depletion at all. Until next video.